And it looks like we are live. What's up, everyone out there? What's up, YouTube people watching the live stream? And what's up, everyone listening to us in podcast land? My name is Prince. Some of you know me as an urban acolyte. And I got my man Ash on. We're doing that thing that we do on Sunday afternoons. This is the Embodied Mind podcast. We're talking fitness, nutrition, the mind and body awareness, that connection. And if you're watching us here on YouTube right now, go ahead, click that subscribe button, ring the bell to enable notifications so that you know when we're going live and when we're posting videos. Before I introduce Ash, I just want to let you guys know that I got this tip from my man, Roberto Blake. When we do these live streams, the live streams are going to go down. They're only for the people who watch us live. You'll get the full podcast episode later, but I'm going to start doing highlight videos that'll have clips from the podcast that'll go up on YouTube during the week. So that's incentive and motivation for those of you listening to the podcast to check us out on YouTube as well. Or we may do little follow-up pieces based on questions that you get later. I just kind of sprung that on Ash. He didn't even know I was going to tell you all that. But anyway, now that we got that out the way, what's up, Ash? How was your week?
Hot and sweaty. Man, it was bad this week. The temperatures are better.
Yep.
All right. Temperatures are still hitting. Well, I mean, I don't know, it was like 112, 114. And the humidity rolled in because the monsoons are here a little bit early. And I kind of got the double whammy because I'm still adjusting to that keto diet. And so it's part of the difficulty with being on the keto diet is like getting your hydration and your electrolytes balanced. So that's one of the things I have to say actually is that like as many of the great benefits that there seem to be of like doing like a low carb approach or like a keto diet, in my opinion, the fact that you have to push like so many supplemental electrolytes. I mean, if I was sedentary and I was indoors most of the time, maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal. But since my activity level is closer to like what I would consider to be like more like an ancestral level, and I have to push so many electrolytes, especially in this environment, is that it's not necessarily like I've heard people describe keto as like a hack, and like a biological hack. And I would have to kind of agree with that a little bit, just because, like I said, it's like the fact that you have to push so many like supplemental electrolytes. So Rob Wolf, who is probably like the most well-known advocate of the keto diet, in his keto masterclass, he recommends that you do like anywhere from 5 to 7 grams of salt a day. So that's 5,000 to 7,000 milligrams of sodium a day, and then plus a corresponding amount of potassium and some magnesium. And so even still with as much of the electrolytes that I've been pushing, so for instance, like last night when I got home, like first thing, as soon as I walked in the door, I slammed some magnesium. And then I jumped in the bath actually, and I did a soak in some Epsom salts to get like that transdermal magnesium going. And man, I still like the last 2 days I've been waking up with like real mild like cramps in my calves. So I know that's like my electrolytes are a little bit off, but it doesn't help because like I said that since I spend so much time outdoors, even since I spend so much time outdoors, even in the summer. It's like I sweat buckets, and so it's like as soon as I go outside, I'm just like hemorrhaging my electrolytes compared to like if I was, more sedentary or wasn't quite so hot out. But yeah, so that's made the last couple of days like pretty a little bit more of a challenge. But I think I've gotten like mostly mostly fat adapted now because like my energy levels feel like I don't feel like I'm trying to crawl through jello anymore, you know. So it's like I've kind of like made that transition metabolically. So then now I just need to get those electrolytes dialed in. But what about you? How's your week?
Well, I was about to ask you if you heard about like this extreme version of keto that Jordan Peterson is doing.
That who's doing?
Jordan Peterson, the what is he, like a philosopher,
Yeah,
psychologist,
yeah, he's a
college
clinical.
professor guy?
Yeah, he's a clinical psychologist and a college professor. But yeah, I mean, I knew that he was doing keto, but I didn't know it was like some like extreme. Like, what did you hear about it?
Yeah, well, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and like, because I read his book. What is it? The 12 Rules or 12 Lessons or something. Well, I didn't read it. I listened to the audio book, but I listened to it twice. And in it, he talks about his daughter. She's got like some extreme case of rheumatoid arthritis that she's had since she was little, to the point that she had to get a hip replacement. I think by the time she was in the 10th or 11th grade. So anyway, she went on a keto diet and it started to clear things up. And then she approached her father, Jordan Peterson, like, I think that you should try this, because I didn't know he's like struggled with like crippling depression on and off throughout his life. And so his daughter got like the worst parts of both of her parents' genes, like the depression on his side, autoimmune diseases on the mom's side. I think Ash might have dropped off trying to fix the audio issue. So I'll keep going until Ash gets back, and I might have to repeat this for him. But anyway, to those of y'all out there who are watching, so anyway, Jordan Peterson went on this keto diet with his daughter. I can't remember. I think her name is Helen or something. And well, one, he lost a lot of weight, but his depression cleared up. And I think they were doing like meat, like chicken. I don't know if they were doing red meat or not. And then like just greens, like green vegetables. And then the extreme version came in because his daughter started having symptoms again. And so she dropped out the greens, like the vegetables. So now she's like just strictly eating meat, right? Like a chicken breast, something like that. And Jordan Peterson ended up doing the same thing. He went on that crazy, he dropped off the green vegetables where he was only eating meat as well. And everything, his depression issues cleared up. He didn't say much about his daughter, but what he did say was the problem that they had was if they ever went off the diet, it's like everything would come just back and forth. Like he ate something that wasn't, and he came off the keto thing, and he had like crippling depression that lasted for a month. He said that if it hadn't finally gone away when it did, he probably would have committed suicide. So like now he's at the point where it's like a chicken breast is that's all he eats. But his appetite has gone down. His daughter, I don't, like I said, I don't remember if he said much about his daughter's symptoms, but he hasn't had, I mean, he feels great. He's exercising now. He's got all this energy. He went from, I think he was like 215 when he started, and now he's down to like 160 pounds. And he lost most of that weight like he lost the first 30 pounds like quick, like
Right.
maybe a month, 2 months. And now he's down 50 pounds. His skin is cleared up. Like I said, the mood is better. He hasn't done any blood work, but it's just crazy. Like he literally just eats like meat, like no vegetables, nothing.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, they call that now like the carnivore diet.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
what he's
but
doing.
so I mean, I actually know somebody personally that has to do that for medical reasons as well, because
Mm-hmm,
he has like ulcerative colitis.
mm-hmm.
So, you know, if like people with that ulcerative colitis, man, if they eat any dietary fiber, they just,
Tears them up.
yeah, they have a
Yeah.
wicked flare up. So, like in his case, he's hoping that in the future, like maybe next year, he'll be able to add back in some non-fibrous like carbohydrates back into his diet. So, because like what he was telling me is that one of the problems that he's having is that now he has to go and get like regular infusions of vitamins and minerals because he does have like certain nutrient deficiencies.
Mm.
So since he was doing like his was prescribed by a doctor, his GI, and so she's been like doing blood work and stuff on him. He goes in for like regular checkups and stuff. I mean, I think, for most people, it's going to be like one of those things where it's like, you might have, some kind of food sensitivity. And so, if you went to like a version of that, like temporarily, um, basically as an elimination diet and then started adding things back in like one at a time, and then you'd be able to figure out like just what food it is that you're sensitive to or which foods you're sensitive to and just eliminate those instead of eliminating everything. But you're going to probably be better off because you're going to have like a more diverse gut bacteria. And so, and I don't know, I mean, I'm not an expert on ulcerative colitis and irritable bowel syndrome, stuff like that, so I don't want to get like too far ahead of myself. But what I would say is that my suspicion right now, like intuitively, is that there's going to be like something else as part of the mechanism that's irritating everybody's bowel. Even, like we talked like a couple episodes ago about Roundup
Yeah, that's yeah.
and yeah, and how bad Roundup is. If it's something like that that's causing the problem, or if it's a lack of diversity in the gut microbiome to begin with. So like since more and more people are getting like more and more urban, they're spending less time around animals, especially like farm animals and out in the forest and stuff like that, to where it's like, uh, you know, because actually, you know, most of the probiotics and stuff that people are taking, especially like the supplemental stuff, it doesn't survive the trip through the small intestine.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, there's a bunch of research that shows that it's still valuable. You still get like a variety of benefits, like especially like for men. One of them was at least in the studies with rodents, they showed like a huge spike in testosterone uh, from supplementing with probiotic. I think it was L-rhamnosus, and so there's still benefits to it, but it doesn't survive the trip through small intestine, so it doesn't populate your large intestine compared to like soil-based organisms. So you figure like back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers, we were just pulling roots out of the ground, picking berries off the trees and all that kind of stuff, and we were ingesting those organisms along
Yeah.
with the fruit. Whereas now, like everything's irradiated and
Yeah, everything's too clean.
yeah, it's triple washed before we ever get it, and we don't have like that direct. I mean, we want that because we don't want E. coli, but at the same time, it's like if you were out like in your garden and you were growing some of your own stuff and you were ingesting a little bit of those soil, you pull a carrot up out of your garden and like munch on it, like because when I was a kid, like I grew up in farm country. So although I didn't grow up on a farm, it was like all my first jobs were on the farms. So it was like I worked on a potato farm, I worked on a dairy farm, but I also, I grew up in that kind of rural area. And so when I was younger, I practiced, a certain level of like foraging and gleaning. So for instance, I don't know if you guys have them in Tennessee, but in central New York, we had this kind of like clover that was real sweet and just a little bit kind of tart and lemony.
Mhm.
So like when I was a kid, that was one of the things that I used to go around foraging for that kind of stuff. I would forage for wild blackberries. I would forage for, We had apples that would grow, like wild apples all over the place. So, it's like when I was younger, I was able to expose my system to like a diverse range of like naturally occurring bacteria. But that is becoming more and more rare,
Yeah.
and as we get more and more urbanized. So my suspicion is probably that it's either it's probably multifactorial. It's probably a combination of like decreased diversity in your gut microbiome and maybe sensitivity to like a lot of the artificial stuff that we've got going on in the system as far as like Roundup and other pesticides and herbicides, the waxes that they put on everything, like all your apples and stuff like that to make the fruit shiny. Then
Make it
you know,
last longer.
right? It's like all this kind of stuff that. My suspicion is that there's maybe some kind of sensitivity, like a combination of like a sensitivity to that and the lack of diversity in the gut microbiome that kind of sets people up for, these kind of like rheumatoid arthritis, like all these autoimmune conditions and ulcerative colitis, things like that. I'm going to pause right there. We have a comment very up top. We have a comment from.
Don't read that.
Okay. Uh, so,
I do
but
have a
yeah, so,
question from you that was a comment on I'm bringing back the urban acolyte. I can't even keep track of all my channels. Golden Bell training channel specifically about keto. Give me a second to find it.
all right. So yeah, but like, going back to what I was saying before is that I think,
Okay, I found it, but I'll let you
okay, go ahead.
finish.
No, go ahead.
All right. Well, he was asking me this question, but I said, "Hey, dude, you need to listen to the podcast." So he said, "So knowing your diet, talking about me, I have a question about an almost opposite diet. My girl is starting a keto diet, basically meat, cheese, and eggs with some veggies thrown in. Is there anything that you are aware of that we should look out for? Seems like an odd diet."
Well, I would say that the way that she's trying to do it is it's an odd diet. So, if like because keto is not like I said, it's more of a hack, right? So if you want to use it, you want to use it right. So you want to make sure that you know what you're doing going into it. So like my recommendation would be to go ahead and head over to Rob Wolf's website, the ketomasterclass.com. It's like, I don't know, I think he had like some kind of special like last month or something. It was like $45 to sign up for his keto masterclass. It's 13 or 14 modules. Everything, like he's got everything all laid out so that you can look and see like exactly like what you're doing and what you want to get into, so that you know what you're doing ahead of time. Because there's like a lot of people. So it's like basically, like the Atkins diet was just a branded version of a ketogenic diet back in the 90s, if people remember the Atkins diet. And, it kind of got popular in the news because it was working for people that knew what they were doing with it. And then, a bunch of people kind of went off half cocked, thinking that they knew what they were doing when they didn't. And they just were eating like meat and cheese and bacon and maybe the occasional avocado. So, it depends on how like strict you want to get with it, because like a true ketogenic diet is like less than 25 grams of net carbohydrates per day. So like even me, like right now, I'm not doing like true keto because I think yesterday, like I was tracking I've been tracking what I'm eating, and I ate 50 grams net of carbohydrates because it's like because I'm more active, so like at that 25 gram per day level is for somebody who's basically sedentary and they want to use like like a ketogenic diet to control like their blood sugar. Like maybe they're like pre-diabetic or they're already diabetic, so they need to control their blood sugar, or they're epileptic. Because actually, like the original purpose of like ketogenic diet was to help treat epilepsy. Those was the first uses of the ketogenic diet, and I think that was like going all the way back to the ancient Greeks. So because I hit 50, so I hit twice that, but because I'm more active, I'm outside in the Arizona summer most of the day, so it's like I need the extra carbohydrates to fuel my activity and to help balance my my electrolyte levels. So, like I said, it's like you don't want to just go off like and try to do like keto half cocked without knowing like what you're doing, because there's another thing is that like what we were talking about earlier is just making sure that you're balancing your electrolytes. So yeah, I mean, if you're just eating like sausage and crappy cheese, or even a decent cheese or whatever, and very little vegetables, I mean, actually, that's not really like what keto is necessarily about. So that's what you want to understand, is that like actually just how much vegetables you can and should be eating on a ketogenic diet, because if you don't, then you're going to end up constipated to boot. Right. So there's like you want to do some research, and you want to make sure that you know what you're doing before you just try to jump off with something like keto.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't really say why she was doing it, but
She, she wants to lose weight just like everyone else. That's why the main thing.
Yeah,
Right.
people jump on fads and don't know why they're doing it.
Right. Yep. So I mean, I would say that I would put veganism in that same boat. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's nothing inherently wrong with veganism as a diet if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. But then you just want to like jump into it. So this will transition nicely into like, as I wanted to ask you about like what fitness apps that you use, and then talk about a few that I'm using. But as through the Keto Masterclass I found out about a nutrition tracking app called Chronometer, without an H. It's just CRON, and we'll put links to these in the show notes below. But like I said, because I wanted to experiment with this and I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right. So like I bought a good digital food scale. So like when I did my meal prep on Friday, because for me is my meal prep day. So when I did my meal prep on Friday, I measured everything down to the gram, and then plugged all the information into Chronometer, and then took a look at like what I was eating on a day-to-day basis to make sure that I was getting like everything covered. And even with me like eating, as a meat eater, and meat and eggs, I'm still like about a half a gram short in cysteine, which is one of your 14 essential amino acids. So, it's like, let's say you just jumped off into doing like veganism without really understanding like what you're doing, you're going to be like radically short in a whole range of amino acids. So it's like, if you're going to do something like that's kind of, I don't know, like a specialized diet, let's say, if you're going to pursue a specialized diet, make sure that you invest some time to understand what you're doing. You might want to get a coach, to have somebody to like review what you're doing, somebody more experienced than you to help like guide you through it. But because that's the thing is like, like I said, the same thing like with Atkins was like, oh, I'll just eat like all processed lunch meat and bacon and maybe like I'm doing Atkins, right? No, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to now, like what I was talking about with that Chronometer, at first I didn't like it, but the more that I get to use it, actually, the more that I like it. And because it's I've used MyFitnessPal in the past. Have you ever used that?
No, I haven't used it.
Have you ever used any like meal tracking app or anything?
No.
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 Um, I've used MyFitnessPal in the past, kind of on and off. For one, I'm generally not a fan of tracking everything like that, because people tend to develop like a lot of food neuroses,
Mhm.
when you're trying to get like that level of control. I'm only doing it now with like a very uh, specific intent. So I'm trying to go for like a very specific result. And because I am doing something very specific, and so I'm trying to like make sure that everything is right. And once I have like everything like dialed in as far as like a plan goes, like maybe in my first 2 weeks, then I won't have to like track everything like every day. And so yeah, so generally I'm not like a big fan of meal tracking just because it tends to mess with people's heads.
Yeah.
It's like you get into like a real a state of where you feel uh, they talk about disordered eating, right? It's not really like an eating disorder like bulimia or anorexia, but it's kind of borderline, so they refer to it as disordered eating. And that kind of meal tracking or food tracking does tend to like promote disordered eating because you go through like cycles of like restrict, 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 binge, binge, binge because you feel like and then you need to like release again because for the most part like a certain few people like I put Mike Mailer in this category where it's like
You said Mailer.
or right or is it Mailer or Mahler? I've heard both ways.
So here's the all right. So the guy who makes the testosterone booster, his last name literally is Her.
Mahler. So because I heard Coach Poliquin pronounce it as Mailer, but he's got that weird French Canadian accent,
Yeah.
so I wasn't sure. Like, I don't think I've ever actually heard Mike say his own last name, but I'd put him in that category of people like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like they have zero emotional attachment to food, like they just eat for fuel, and that's why like Mike can live on like a bucket full of pea protein, and I'm sure he has. I don't know all the ins and outs of his diets, but I have heard him discuss, I think in the past that like he supplements with like a lot of pea and rice protein to make sure that he's getting his
Well,
macros in.
he's because his mom is, Mike is half Indian, so
Right.
his mom was vegetarian. Yeah, he's been vegan over 20 years. So Mike cooks like he's done it for so long. So he can like just walk in and throw a meal together, no recipe, anything. So uh like he does protein shakes, but I think it's more out of convenience. He's so dialed in that he can get everything from his food
Right.
for the most part. Yeah, so I mean he enjoys cooking, so it's like a meditation for him.
Okay.
Um,
So I'll take that back about using him as an example.
yeah.
That was just from yeah, that's just from some of the stuff that I've seen him post on Twitter. Uh,
Did we get
said in
cut
the
out?
past.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't. Yeah, I don't see you. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Um, but I know Arnold Schwarzenegger has said in the past, like he has like zero emotional attachment to food. He only eats for fuel, right? And that's a very like small percentage of people. It's
Migos
like
that way.
right. So I mean, they do exist, right? But for the most part, like the average person has like a deeply emotional connection to food because there's all the social elements um, around food and eating, right? And it's like that's another thing. It's like for the most part, like people like they don't eat macros, they eat meals, right? You
Yeah.
you you enjoy a dish, right? Because it's like let's say you can sit down and like if you want to just hit your macros, okay, there's like a tin of sardines, like an extra tablespoon of butter, let's say if you're doing like keto, and maybe like a handful of macadamia nuts or almonds or something like that. That's not a dish. And that's not going to, for most people, like some people can be able to do that, but for most people, that's not going to be satisfying, right? Like you want a dish, you want a meal, and then like there's all the social element around food and eating, it's like for the most part. So especially like you say, like, and think about like from the Kung Fu community, right? It's like half of the teaching takes place around the dinner table, like after training is over, and it's like food and eating and going out to, the restaurant for Chinese New Year, or even just after, like going out for dim sum, or, like as part of, how much of food revolves around Chinese culture, or vice versa. And it's the same like in all cultures, it's like every time we celebrate, what do? We have a feast, right?
Yeah.
Come together and eat. So it's like for most people, there's a deep emotional connection to food and eating. And so like if you suddenly, again, like you try to go to do like some extreme diet, or you start tracking like what you're eating like real close, like restrict, control, and then you're not, like, either you didn't fix your relationship with food, or you didn't find like another outlet for like that kind of stress, because where, like you said, you eat and then you get like that shot of dopamine and serotonin, like, I just binged on my favorite pint of ice cream at the end of a long week.
Yeah.
That's where then and you start trying to like track and control everything like real close. That's bad news. So let me see. Flaco85 Montes asks, "What's a dish like for both of you? What does it look like?" So I don't know. I haven't noticed you posting much food porn over on your Instagram account, but
Not lately.
I do. Yeah, I do. So Flaco, if you want to check that out, go ahead and head over to Instagram and at my account at Ash Higgs. Especially like lately, I've been posting a lot of my meals to my Instagram story, so you'll be able to check those out and see what the meals look like. So let's go back to talking about fitness apps. Do you use any apps at all?
I don't know if YouTube counts, but I use YouTube University more for like cooking stuff, not so much like for the fitness. But one app that I do use, what's it called? It's a rep max calculator. So for like all the powerlifting stuff, since I don't have a spotter, I'm in my garage by myself. I can't actually test my 1RM, I probably never will, because that's not important to me. What's your bench press max? Or I don't give a shit, right?
Right.
I train for performance. Like, I don't care what I can squat or what I can deadlift. I just want to dunk a basketball when I turn 45 on somebody in a league.
Right.
That's my goal. Just like Jeff does the softball stuff. I want to be Kung Fu master, and I'll dunk on your ass. But I do have to know like my you typed. Okay, I was like, how did the embodiedMIND podcast just reply? I was like, what just happened? But anyway, so like I had this rep max calculator. So it's like, oh, well, I did this for 10 reps. So I plugged that in under 10 reps, and it'll show me this is your 1RM, 2RM, 3RM. And I know how to calculate those on my own. But you know what? If you have an app that does it, then I don't have to sit here and pull out my textbooks on personal training and all of that. It's just, it's like, oh, I'm in the middle of a workout. Okay, I did this for 10 reps. Okay, that's my 1RM. That's my new 1RM for next weekend. I mean, it's not real. Like, I didn't actually do it, but it helps me with calculations for my next workout or the next cycle.
Because, what's weird about that too was back in the day, like when I used to do a lot more barbell stuff, like according to the calculations for 1 rep max, like I used to be able to bang out like on the bench. I would do like 5 sets of 5 with 275,
Mm-hmm.
which should have easily put me over the 310 mark for a 1 rep max, and I could never hit the three big wheels. Like anytime I would actually put them on the bar. So, I mean, I think probably some of it was just psychological. It's like you see that extra plate go on the ends, and you're like, oh man, it's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I could never really quite make those formulas work for me. But I did miss the name of it. What did you say the name of it was? The app?
It's the Rep Max calculator.
And then I'm assuming that's available through the Google Play Store.
Yeah, yeah. And then there was another one that I used to like for like metabolic conditioning, but it was only for Apple because I had it on my iPad, and I guess there was some update to the iOS, and they never updated the app. I think BJ Gaddour, who was like big for metabolic, he even had like a metabolic conditioning certification. I think he created the app, but they like discontinued. It was really great because you could set the intervals, and then it would say, "Oh, 10 seconds left. Stop. Here's your break." Like you could literally, if you were training a group of people, let the app play, and then it would like do music too, so you could have your playlist. And it's like, all right, I can like teach and demonstrate when I have a group class going and not have to worry about the time and watching the clock. And then I just say, listen for the dude with the voice is much deeper than mine. And it was awesome. Like if you're teaching a group, like any kind of metabolic conditioning class, like you just set all the timers up beforehand, let it go, and then you can teach while it keeps track of the time and everything.
Right.
I don't remember the name of the app because I ended up deleting it off my iPad. But if you're an app maker out there and you can find that app, please make a new one and make it available for Android. If you say $5, $5.99, every freaking trainer who uses Android who does some kind of metabolic conditioning class will buy that.
Well, actually, I have a suggestion for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's an app that's one of the apps that I use that I wanted to talk about. It's called Seconds Pro.
Uh-huh.
So they have a free version and then they have a paid version. I think the paid version is like $2.99 or maybe $4.99 or something like that. It's not a lot. And we're going to have links to all these apps in the video description below. So if you guys want to check them out, make sure you go ahead and check out the video description. But yeah, Seconds Pro is super highly individualized or a very customizable timer. And
Nice.
it has, yeah, and so it's like you can choose, like you can just choose to have it silent. You can have it count down. You can have just like a 5 second warning. You can do like voice to or text to voice. So you type in like what you want it to say, and the app will cue you like what exercise is coming up next based on like what you input. And
Dude, I need that for my Ely chin practice.
yeah, you can set up completely custom rounds. So it's like you can do like a 2 minute, a 5 minute. You can do like a hit round. It's like very, very almost it's kind of there's a steep learning curve to using it because it's so customizable. But then even you can choose to set music like to each of your rounds. And then you can set it up so it's like each round would play a different song, or that the music will continue. Like you could set a playlist behind it, and the music will play through like as you go through the rounds. So that one's a badass app. Yeah. And the developer is pretty responsive. So like if you get in touch with him through like the support, because it's just like a husband and wife team that designed the app in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get back to you and they'll point you in the direction of some of their tutorials that they have on YouTube, like if you have a
Nice.
question. So yeah, for the $5 or whatever it is that I spent on it, I mean, and of all the apps that I use, I probably use that app actually the most. I use it for my own workouts. I use it for when I'm running class and we're doing partner training. So, I mean, I use that app constantly. So if I only had to have one app on my phone right now for fitness stuff, I mean, that's the one that I would use.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds exactly like uh, whatever BJ Gaddour's app was. So I'm definitely gonna check that out. Yeah, I've been missing that. When I had Fitness Revolution, I used that to run every class, every
Right.
class. Like,
So, and then especially now too with because I don't know. Do you have any of those the Bluetooth speakers, like the JBL, like Bluetooth speakers?
yeah, I have one, but I just keep it in my bathroom so I can rock out while I shouldn't have done that. It was in my
Right.
bathroom
I was
while
trying to
I'm in the
figure.
shower.
Right.
And I
I'm
can
rocking
listen to
out with something out. Uh,
no, so I can listen to Kendrick Lamar while I'm in the shower.
right. Uh, but what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, because then it's like you can hook up your mobile device to your wireless speakers so that you can actually like broadcast
Yeah.
like a legit amount of sound. If you were teaching like in a group setting like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to get another Bluetooth speaker when I start the ILC classes in the fall. So yeah, I'm definitely that'll take a lot of pressure off of me because I decided I'm not going to worry about. I'm still going to focus on getting my form down, but with them, I'm like the 15 basics and not even all of. I'd like them to do all of them, but I mean, well, man, this is why I wish you were like new people here because I'm coming behind Larry Lee, and all he was doing was teaching them Wild Goose Qigong. So, it's like if they think they're doing some kind of Qigong for health, but we're doing parts of the 15 basics, that's all they probably really want.
right.
Uh, but I'd like to eventually get to the form and spinning hands, but that might be more than the people I'm imagining. That might be more than they can handle.
Yeah, I mean, it really is going to depend on your audience because, like on Thursdays, we started meeting at this park here in Tempe, where it's kind of like they have like a big, I don't know what to call it, like a gathering or whatever. Basically they like somebody just organized like free yoga in the park.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's like a hippie magnet. So it's like, all the people show up for yoga and they have a DJ that comes out and then he sets up and DJs music afterwards, like after the yoga class is done. And because what they do is they have like all these different like local yoga teachers come out and they teach like a free yoga class. And then after the class is over, then they kind of split up into different groups. And it turns into like, it's kind of like a little mini weekly like Burning Man almost. So it's like they're playing music, they got the DJ going, they got like 3 or 4 guys that come and string up uh, um, slack lines, so
Mm-hmm.
you can jump on it and do slack lining. They have girls that are doing like hula hoops and all the poi balls, like the glow in the dark ones, and they have like they did like a prayer circle one week. Sometimes they have a drum circle going. So it's kind of a cool vibe. But so like we started meeting over there because like at one point like we're talking with the organizer about maybe like that we were going to teach like a qigong class or like a tai chi kind of class as part of that every during the week or just on occasion or whatever. And so we started going over there, and like we showed up like in our full, like, our t-shirts. So basically everybody was in uniform, and, and we were doing like some of our partner training stuff, and everyone, like, you could tell that like they weren't into that vibe. And we were just kind of doing our thing, like off to the side, like we were waiting for the free yoga thing to be done so that we could join in on the slacklining. And, everyone was kind of like giving us like the side eye, and they weren't, it's like they weren't feeling the partner training stuff. So it's like, so after like 2 weeks of being over there and kind of like getting some feedback off of that vibe, we were like, yeah, okay, if we do anything with these guys, like on an official capacity, like it's just going to be like Qigong, just a little something like kind of feel good, breathe a little bit, and then call it a day, because they're not going to be feeling like any kind of partner training at all.
No.
But it's still cool to get out and have some fun over there and kind of be part of that vibe. So it's like, even though I used I said it was kind of like a hippie magnet, but that's not all bad. I don't necessarily use that as a pejorative.
I knew what you meant.
Oh yeah, but maybe the audience list, right?
Yeah.
So I saw a couple of your Instagram posts like over this past week about how you had to kind of dial back your workout from like what you had planned on based on how you were feeling that day. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it was I dialed back the weight. Like, I had been, when I was, we talked, when I was in the school, and I would take some of the special needs students to the gym, like they had actual weights, and the guys that I had, their weight class was with like people on the football team. So it was like, the other kids, they go in there and they were just, regular high school weight class. And then my guys are in there with guys who are really, want a big group of a big class.
Right.
And some of these guys are trying to get, Division I AA scholarships and stuff. So it's like, you guys can't really play around in here. You either got to work out or get out of the way.
Right.
But anyway, I would have no problem snatching a 24 kilo, because I was showing some of the football players how to work with kettlebells. And the weight coach, he actually, I think he interned with the Titans. So he was like legit. And then he used to run a kettlebell gym too. So part of the time I was trying to talk to him about, hey man, you can make some extra money after school and during the summer when football season's not in, training these same guys, but that didn't, I think he's kind of content with just being a strength and conditioning coach and football coach. But anyway, so my point is, like, during the school year, I had no problem with the 24. And then during my workout this week, and I didn't say this in that little short 1-minute clip, but the snatches come at the end of the workout. And I do like Dave's program, but then I power lift before that. So I did like bench, and I'm like, my grip is probably already shot because I bench pressed, and then I did the whole workout, and now I'm doing snatches. I'm sweaty. So I had trouble holding on to the kettlebell one because my hands are wet and it's humid. So the kettlebell's wet. And then like I'm getting calluses again from getting back in the kettlebell. So like when my form gets bad and my grip is gone, like kettlebells pinch and I'm like, I'm a tear a callus.
All right.
And then using the cast iron bells, I'm so used to using the comp bells now that the grip is just completely different. Where I really don't even like cast iron bells unless all I'm doing is like heavy two-hand swings, because the comp bells really aren't made to use with two hands. So when I said I dropped down, I dialed it back. Well, I tried to dial it back during that workout, but by then my grip was shot. So even the 16s were like, I was like, I'm gonna tear a callus, like, because I shouldn't even be snatching at this point, but
Right.
I'm trying to push through the workout, which I really just should have said, you know what? My hands are shot. I did enough. That's it. Recover, come back tomorrow, with a different workout. Try again the next snatch day. So the next snatch day, I switched up to, well, I met halfway. I said, well, I struggle with 24. I can either do 18 or 20. I'll go with 18 kilo, and I'll go to the comp bells. And I had no problem. The other thing that I've been talking about is like my hip hinge is not there. And I had, this is, if you're a coach out there and you're listening, coaches like to coach, but before you start offering advice, get all of the information on the person before you start offering tips. I'm not trying to clap at this dude. I think it was like a CrossFit coach was like, oh, I think you need to foam roll your hips. Your hip extensors are tight. And I'm like, first off, I think foam rolling is stupid. I know it has its uses, but I'm not going to sit there and foam roll for 30 minutes before a workout that's going to take 40 minutes. I can just do some quick mobility stuff and get my workout done. And if I'm really that tight, I probably need to like go get a massage or go see someone who actually knows what they're doing. So I'm not going to foam roll. Maybe I do have tight hip extensors, but maybe it's the case that I do competition style kettlebell stuff. And so sometimes I get confused, like my body, like if you watch, whenever I swing or snatch and I'm doing hard style, if you look at my knees, you can tell that like I'm trying to like do competition style. Because one of my, if you watch my feet and my ankles, and that's where I have to do banded swings to reteach that movement pattern, how to hinge properly. So he was like, oh, I think this is tight and you need to do this. And I'm like, no, I just need to go. I need to put a band around a kettlebell and swing it and do like 100 reps, 10 reps of 10 or 10 reps of 5 sets of 10, whatever, until I start to get that hinge back and I'm exploding and because that, having the band pulls you back down and you have to explode out.
Yeah, I like to use the band kind of the same way, but just without the kettlebell, and just to learn how to be able to hinge the hip and then extend. So that way, like I use that to try and teach people that don't know how to hinge the hip. But yeah, I like basically the same kind of thing. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're saying get all the information.
Yeah, get all the information before you jump in and start offering tips, because and then one of the things I like about like Ken Blackburn, IKFF, is they say, really your anatomy dictates your form. So it's, like one guy he was telling me that he was taught to swing differently. And he's like, you're not bending your knees enough. And I'm like, well, first off, it's a hip hinge, not a squat. I don't really need to bend my knees. My arms are long, my legs are short.
Right.
So the way that I do some things is going to be different for somebody who might have long legs, short arms. But even still, I was like, I had to stop myself from saying, no, dude, you're wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why, because I think like in the last 2 days, like people have asked me for advice about, like I had some people contact me like, hey, like I'm having, like this problem. Can you give me some advice about like, what I should do? And I'm like, it's hard to just give you like a recommendation without like a full evaluation, like to take you through some things. Like I need to look at this. I need to know that. Like what's your, like one guy was asking about like muscle recovery. What's your age? What's your sleep like? What's your protein? Because he was like looking for like a supplement. Like, whoa, before we start talking about supplements, like let's look at like some of the other like more fundamental things that we need to understand. Like I said, like to understand like, okay, why aren't you recovering the way that you think you should be?
Yeah.
Like that's another thing too. Like, if you're 45, you're not going to recover the same way as when you were 25. That's just the way it works. So it's like we got to make sure that we have like realistic expectations of, what's your activity level, what's your, how much recovery are you doing, what kind of active recovery stuff before we start looking for like a magic bullet, for recovery. Um, but I thought that it was kind of interesting when I had caught that post of yours on Instagram, because then actually like the very next day was my workout day, and which was kind of part of what I wanted to talk about, because like the topic of like um, so it's anyway. So I started to do my workout, and I was doing like long cycle clean and jerk
Nice.
into a like long cycle clean and jerk into a reverse lunge, and so part of the problem, there's like two problems. First one is like all last year I had a wicked case of turf toe on my right foot. So like I couldn't like flex my toe at all. So I couldn't do like any kind of like reverse lunge movement or anything like that, or like doing Turkish get-ups or anything like that was tough, because it would flex that toe or extend that toe. And it took like a year for it to finally like get better, and it's like starting now to like recover. So I was actually able to like step back into the lunge pattern without any pain. Um, so that was good, but my form was a little dodgy because now I hadn't been doing that movement for like a year. And then at the same time too is like actually like I injured my left hand, and
Mhm.
that's from the climbing gym. So I tore something in this area, like right at the joint, and it's taken for so like and it's taken a long time to heal because any gripping action kind of aggravates it, and it's white tissue anyway, so that always takes a long time to heal. So like instead of doing exactly what I wanted to do, I had to dial it back. So instead of doing as many reps per set as what I wanted, I like just kind of dialed it back. I think I was doing like maybe like 3 to 5 reps per side at the most, and then I would set the bell down and kind of recover. So that I was just focusing on doing like quality work over like intensity and volume, which I think a lot of people, I mean, if you've been in the game for a while, if you're like a professional, then this is like old news for you. But I think like a lot of like, like regular people that aren't like in the health or fitness industry or whatever, they think of like, it's like they've seen too many Rocky training montages, or too many like crazy workout clips on Instagram. Whereas like, when you're done, you need to be like gassed on the floor, like leaving yourself, making sweat angels,
Yeah.
on the mats. And it's like, that's not what it's about. It's like, it's the quality, like long term, the quality is what matters more than the quantity or the intensity. Um, like I was, that's another thing. Like people think, like, oh, if I'm gonna I don't want to get in. I'd like to get in shape, but it's not worth like living in the gym. You don't need to live in the gym.
Mhm.
It's like get in, get out, and then recover. It's more about recovery than anything. But I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was Derek something. Like I was just listening to him on the Rob Wolf podcast. But he's like a national champion in Olympic weightlifting, and they were talking about the difference between like the regular season and the off season. And this guy is like a national level champion, and even he was saying, nope, it's the off season. I'm down to 2 days a week. I might do three, and on Saturday I do like some recovery stuff, like some mobility and some recovery stuff, and that's it. Right. So it's like you don't have to, like if you've been inactive for a while and you're deconditioned, and you want to start getting back into something, it's like you don't need to have the mindset of like, okay, I need to monitor everything, every single thing that I eat to start with. I need to work out 6 days a week, weights in the afternoon, cardio in the morning. Like that's the only way to get in shape.
Mm-mm. No.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't even do that. Like I think last week I talked about, yeah, my trick now is that second workout after work. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it at all this week. And I realized why. It was like, wait a minute. I get up, early, do my meditation, get this workout in, and then go to work. And I'm going through all this stuff for 8, 7.5, 8 out, whatever, however long I'm there. I was like, I get home, I'm fried. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's like I could take a walk, and I have done that. I was like taking a walk, listen to podcasts, but it's like I don't really have it in me right now to go and do some body weight training and go work on kung fu because it's like what's the quality of my practice really going to be if I'm
Right.
just completely fried? I'm like just going through the motions. Now, I did do a video on like somebody asked me like how long do you need to train Tai Chi, and I basically said it depends on your goal. And I really feel like, yeah, you want it. And somebody said, so yeah, P, it's all about quality over quantity. And I'm like, yeah, but depending on what you're training for, sometimes it is about getting those reps in. And they might be shitty reps, but I mean, it's like if you're boxing, you got to get that bag work in, and sometimes you might not feel like doing it, right? It might not be the best because you're fatigued, but it's like that's kind of the point of the training, right? Is to get that set in muscle memory so that when you don't feel the best, you can still throw it out there, you know, as perfect as you can at that
Right.
time.
Well, or, like if you're going to be going into a competitive fight, and that you're going to be doing like 3 3-minute rounds, like at the amateur level,
Mm-hmm.
then like when you're doing your metabolic conditioning, you're doing like your energy systems work. It's like and you're going, if you're about to go into competition, like you need to be able to get that volume of work in, at least some of the time. And that was more than anything, actually, was the reason why like I stopped fighting competitively. And it wasn't because I couldn't go into the gym and get it done anymore. Like I could still go in and perform, but it was like the recovery, because by that time I think I was about 35. I'm, drug free. I had like my other stuff going on. It's like I had a regular job at the time, which I've always been, just like a laborer. So it's like that. So that volume was part of my.
Static
Is it going again? How's that?
is good.
All right. So I had to turn my. I had to put my phone back into airplane mode. So actually, I got dropped from the call, like when you were talking about Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And I joined back into the call, and it was like you didn't even notice I was gone, so I
No,
didn't even.
I noticed. I was like, I think Ash dropped, so I'm gonna
Oh,
just keep
okay.
going until he comes back.
Right. Well, yeah, you just flowed right with it like a
Yeah.
professional. Um, but yeah, I
I
mean that
think you
was a
missed the part where I was talking about his daughter's autoimmune, like rheumatoid arthritis and
right,
stuff. Though.
right. But actually, I was already familiar with the backstory, so it was like I was able to
Okay.
just jump right in. Um,
Cool.
but yeah, it was the recovery was the biggest one. So it's like when in technical terms they talk about it as your allostatic load. It's like what
Mhm.
is it's like your training stress is not your only stress in life, and it's like if you're 35, 40, 45, maybe even 50 or whatever, and it's like you still work and you have a family and maybe somebody in the family is sick, maybe not, or whatever, like all these different things that you go on, like all these different stressors go into that bucket of your total like allostatic load. And so it's like you can't just throw like a whole bunch of training stress on top of like all that other stress and expect to be able to just adapt right away. I mean, maybe you might be able to, like everyone's like total limits are going to be individual, but it's like you got to take all that stuff into consideration. And it's like you got to give yourself permission to just say, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. Like this is what it was on paper. This is what I wanted to do, but I got to go in and make a change. It's like either my nervous system it hasn't recovered from the last time I trained, or that big blow up that I had at work with my boss, or at home with one of the kids or whatever, and I still haven't recovered from that. And that's where knowing like some good breathing exercises are really useful. So, do you know who Brian McKenzie is and those guys?
Mm-mm.
So, Brian McKenzie, he has a couple of websites, I think, but the one that I'm thinking of in particular is called Power Speed Endurance.
Mm.
And so he was kind of initially like a part of the Wim Hof community. So he got started with them, but since he's located in Southern California, so he got plugged in at Stanford University through a lot of the research that they're doing over there with Stanford Medical. And so they kind of like took all the basic like breathing routines that Wim Hof was teaching, and then they did like a whole bunch of research, with all the equipment that they have available. And they've got it like dialed into a science now, like all the different like breathing cadences and how they communicate, or how they coordinate with exposure training, so like sauna and cold as well. And so they're doing some training around. So I think actually I'm going to go. They're going to have one here in town in October.
Nice.
And yeah, so I'm going to go. I'm going to go to that. And I'm going to see how that works, because it's like being able to like restore yourself to a parasympathetic state. Because like you go in, you train, you get ramped up into a sympathetic state. You want to be able to like down regulate as fast as possible, like when you're done, back to a parasympathetic state, so you can start recovering. So we have a question in chat from Rodney Brown. Says he is considering doing the Elements program. How did that work for you? Are you familiar with the Elements program?
Yeah, that's the introductory program for gold medal bodies.
Oh, okay. Go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah. So Elements, it's the introductory program. It basically consists of 3 movements that you do a lot, but you build up to them, but you're doing variations of those 3 movements. So it's like the bear crawl, the frogger. If you go on my Golden Belt training channel, I have like 2 videos from last summer of the first week of Elements and then the second week of Elements. And then the last one is like the monkey. I'm actually going to start that series again. That's why I was talking about like my afternoon workouts. Once I guess once I like stop crashing when I get home from work, I'm going to start that series again, but it's probably going to run a week behind. So whenever you see the week 1 video, I'll probably be on like week 3 in real time. I'm not going to pressure myself to get those out. But when I did it last summer, I got all the way up to like week 6, and I had to go out of town for a YouTube thing, and that just threw me completely off because I couldn't train while I was at the hotel in Atlanta. But I got really good at doing the moves. My mobility was a lot better. I can already hit a rock bottom squat, but I was able to, like, when you start doing the monkey and especially the frog, like you're basically in a rock bottom squat doing those movements, and my thighs would burn. I mean, it gets really uncomfortable. I got comfortable sitting in that squat, and like my posture seated in that squat was a lot more improved. And like I said, you're building the foundation to do other moves, so like other programs, but it's like the other programs that come later also make you better if you go back and do Elements again. So like focus flexibility is obviously going to make you more flexible. Integral strength is going to make you stronger at doing those moves. So this time I want to do elements, move on to focus, flexibility, and integral strength, and then come back and go through elements again to track the progress. And I mean, my goal is to eventually go through all the programs. I have everything but Parallettes 1 and 2 and the rings programs. They pretty much already know my intentions are to get certified as a GMB coach at some point, and I want to do precision nutrition coaching and coach people with that completely body weight. It'll be like my ninja training or something, right? Don't need a kettlebell. You just your body and how to eat, how to move, and get you ready to come do some elite chin with us. And then if you want to do kettlebell stuff too, we'll see how that goes later on. Kettlebells, powerlifting. But yeah, so, I love it. I think it's a great program.
Okay, that's cool. I just need to put it out there since like we keep like bouncing back and forth between kettlebells and Elitron. So we do need to make the caveat that kettlebells are not a part of the Elitron program. That's things that Prince does, things that I do like on our own for our own reasons that we discuss as part of the podcast. But
Bruce Lee used to train with kettlebells.
Really? I never saw that.
Yeah, I read it I heard it from Dan Inosanto, but he didn't do hard style. He actually did the competition style, but he had like a makeshift kettlebell. So it was like the things where you can put the adjustable weight plates on it.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, he did kettlebell swings.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of different things there's a lot of things that you can train. It's like there's body weight, barbell, there's all the gymnastic stuff, which is essentially like variations of body weight stuff. But, it's like I keep coming back to kettlebells because they're so like versatile and I don't want to, I guess like convenient, I guess. Because like on Thursday, man, it was like the hottest day of the year so far. It was like 114. The humidity level was up already because the monsoons are rolling in. And I was like, man, it's too hot to go work out outside, which normally I do. But like I was just feeling kind of like a little bit depleted. And I said, oh, it's not gonna, if I don't work out inside, it's not going to happen. Well, so guess what? I just kicked the kids out of the living room and I grabbed a 16 and got in like a quick, decent workout in a small space, like 6x8. So it's like, that's why no matter what, it's like, I keep coming back to kettlebells over and over again. How's that? All right. So we're getting on to over an hour now. So why don't we transition real quick? We'll finish up with our last segment where we talk about a scientific research paper.
You should put your trust in the Lord.
I don't believe in God. I believe in science.
What about the Tao?
Same thing. All right. So this week's study is titled "The Reduction of Movement in Neurological Diseases: Effects on Neural Stem Cell Characteristics." So if you guys want to read the study for yourself, go ahead and click the link in the video description below. But essentially, this one initially caught my eye because, of course, this is the Embodied Mind podcast, which our essential premise is that there's no separation between the mind and the body. Right? It's the mind and body is one thing. And that's why I was kind of thinking about it over the course of the week, because like trying to come back to like, how can we summarize what it is that we're talking about? And I kept coming back to that Japanese concept of kokoro again, which we had talked about in a past episode, but we won't get distracted with that right now. but that's what initially attracted me to read more about this study, was because it was like the effects of the lack of movement on your brain, like having like direct implications for your brain. And as I read more through the study, that didn't end up being like my big takeaway. Like it wasn't actually there wasn't like a direct connection between like what they did in the study and like any kind of like cognition or anything like that. Ended up having some very specific effects on neural stem cells. But basically, what they did was this was like an in vitro study, which basically means either like they did it in a petri dish, or they did like slides or whatever to take images of like after the end of the study period. But for 14 days, what they did was they suspended mice by their tail so that their legs were unloaded, and they were free to like move around their cage and everything, and they were free to eat like at will, but they just couldn't use their rear legs. And then after 14 days, they sacrificed all the mice, and then they did some analysis on their brains. They dissected their brains and took some slides and some images of them, did some other tests, and so what ended up coming back was like after the period of so this was actually my big takeaway. It wasn't actually what happened with the neural stem cells. Because I honestly I didn't really understand the significance of that, because they were talking about how like in the in general like neuroplasticity in the adult human brain is limited to like a very few specific regions, like around the hippocampus and like around the brainstem, and so basically like a lack of exercise changed how the stem cells ended up differentiating like later on after a lack of exercise, and basically there was like a reduction in how many of those stem cells were proliferated. So long story short, there is so you're not doing your brain any favors with an inactive lifestyle. But later on, like what I did take away from the study that I felt that I had a pretty good handle on was, and what I thought was really interesting was that at the end of at the study, there was some epigenetic changes that took place in the mice due to the lack of and two very specific proteins. And then more generally throughout some other proteins, but they said that it wasn't like statistically significant. But the thing of it is you got to think of that this was only a 14-day study. So 2 weeks, just 2 weeks of like being inactive was enough to start creating changes at the genetic level, starting to affect the way that genes express themselves. So you got to think about like, you can, is the reverse true? I mean, we would have to see some look at some of the other studies that they've done, but it's like, okay, you know what? If you've been inactive and you're setting yourself up for some negative changes at the genetic level to express genes that might predispose you towards one disease or another. So like what we were going back to talk about earlier in the episode with ulcerative colitis, or rheumatoid arthritis. It's like, yeah, you might have that gene, but as the epigenetic factors, which will determine whether or not that gene gets turned on or off and to what degree, right? So it's like just 2 weeks of changes in your lifestyle is enough to start to reverse that process. And so there was some changes at the genetic level, and there was like an overall metabolic change
that's what I'm looking at.
Due to the lack of exercise. But the thing that the light bulb that really went off for me with this study, which, like I said, it went in a different direction than what I was anticipating when I went into the study. But what is that? It's all about the legs. So, it's like, because what did they do? They suspended their legs, their rear legs, so which for, for in a mouse model would be the equivalent of our lower body. And I haven't looked at any of the studies that have come out recently, but I have seen like more and more and more that the research is coming out is like the importance of like your lower body and keeping the legs strong in overall health and wellness, which really tracks with, it's like the Olympic guys, the powerlifting guys, and even the bodybuilding guys for like a long time have been saying it's like, if you focus, like the bodybuilding guys, right? They say if you want to get big, get a big squat, because it's like when you squat and you squat heavy, it'll produce like a bigger response overall in the whole body. It's like the powerlifting guys, it's like the squat, right? Is the Olympic, the Olympic guys, I mean, they're already kind of squatting, but it's like it's that lower body movement, and I don't know if have you seen like the study that they did with they did an MRI, like a cross-sectional MRI of like a sedentary 70-year-old's quads, and they compared them. Yeah. So what they did was they took 3 images using an MRI, and they did like a cross section of like a 70-year-old's quads that was sedentary, and it was like they basically had the same circumference of thigh, at least as far as what I could tell from looking at the images. But they had the same overall circumference of the thigh, but the sedentary 70-year-old was like maybe 30% lean mass and 70% adipose or fat mass, right? Just like empty space around, more or less. And then they compared it to the 20-year-old, and the 20-year-old was like 90% lean mass in the thigh and maybe 10% like adipose tissue. And then they did an MRI of a 70-year-old cyclist, so somebody that's using their legs all the time, and his cross section looked every bit the same
Like
as the 20-year-old.
I have seen that. Seen that. I didn't remember it. Somebody when I got my ultrasound device that measures body fat, that's where somebody showed me that study.
Oh, you got an ultrasound machine?
Yeah, it's just a USB thing. It plugs right in. There's a program that runs, and you put the gel on, and you can measure body fat with it.
Is it like regional or like a global measurement?
There's regional locations. I mean, you can do like a one plate, like on the arm, just for demonstration purposes. But then you can do like a 3-site measurement, a 7-site, a 12-site. And the more information, the more accurate it is. But for most people, when I think the company like was located in Scottsdale, because I remember I don't think they sold too many, because it used to be when you buy a unit, they would actually call you up and you would like go through the training over the phone. They tell you how to use it. And I don't remember if they did like a remote like screen share where they could see the program running. But yeah, I remember I did it in here, and the guy was like, yeah, if you do the three site thing, just with your clients, it's going to be pretty accurate. I mean, you don't want them to be getting, completely undressed if you're,
right.
Training in the middle of a gym or something. And this is a side note, but I feel really bad for the 3 women that I did, because like the hip, I thought I would like almost had them like pull their pants down, because I thought I saw the site in the wrong, because the women's site and the men's sites are different.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it's supposed to be like right here. And I like was like almost swiping their vaginal region, because that's where I thought it was.
Right.
And I feel horrible now, but luckily nobody, I'm not part of the Me Too movement or anything like that.
Right.
It was like, I was looking at the picture. There was no way for me to be trained on how to do a woman, because I'm not a woman, and the person on the phone was a guy. So I was just going by the picture and reading the description, and the description sounded like it was like, like the fold area, and then
Right.
some lady posted a video, and I was like, oh, that's where it is.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure you're all right.
Yeah, in my defense, I didn't want to do it either. I was like, I can't believe I have to do this. But now that I know, and knowing is half the battle, for any ladies out there that I might be training in the future, in the event that there's some like, darn it, I was hoping I could pull my pants down for them. Sorry, ladies. Sorry, I'm a professional.
Well, they can do that for you. They can do that for you anytime, but just not in a professional setting.
Yeah, well, I have this thing. I'm like, look, if we're getting to that point, then you're not a client anymore. So you need to come later when everybody else is gone.
Right.
If our relationship is to that point, and then our training sessions are like dates. So
Right.
if I'm not inviting you to the house later, for a free workout plus, then we're strictly professional. And yeah, I won't be swiping all 12 sites. Just the 3 where they're supposed to be.
Alrighty, bro, let's wrap up for this week.
Yeah. All right. You have anything coming up this week or anytime soon? Workshops? Anything like that?
Yeah, so it'll be too late for anybody listening unless you're listening live. But if you're in the Sacramento, California area, July 21st, 22nd, I will be teaching an Elitron workshop over there in West Sacramento. And I think, I don't know, so like we won't be able to record on the 22nd for that, obviously. And then possibly on the 28th, I might be going to San Francisco for a 1-day meditation training with Venerable Jiru. So he's basically my Zen meditation teacher at this point, nice. Or I would consider him to be so. Although I have not been formally accepted as like a lay disciple or anything like that, but he was the one that, we went to the Mid-America Buddhist Association last year in August for the week retreat, and I've been keeping up with his method ever since. And he has a satellite group there in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, among like mostly among the Chinese community, but now it's expanding out into more Westerners.
Nice.
Like through like Elitron. So yeah, so I don't know. I'm kind of hit and miss on that one right now, and I won't know until the last minute. But definitely on the 22nd, we won't be able to record because I'll be in Sacramento. But let me see. Other than that, July.
There an Elitron group in San Francisco?
Oh yeah, like the Bay Area is like that's on the West Coast. The Bay Area is like our big center. We have Kaive is in like San Francisco. Bernie's on the Oakland side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then I think Dima is still on the Oakland side, and then there's Mike Chan.
They all have like their own individual schools, or they just
no. There's like 6 different little
sweet
schools over there. Yeah,
and there's a Sacramento group.
Not yet, but it was kind of somebody invited me over there, okay. And then there are a few like scattered local students, but then it looks like a lot of the folks from the Bay Area are going to be coming down. But yeah, so if you're listening live right now and you want to come check that out, there is still time. We have a limited number of spots that are available, so send me a DM on Twitter, and I'll tell you how to get in.
Do you do anything on in Southern Cal?
I used to have a student that I was working with regularly in Irvine, it's like in the Orange County area, but he moved back to Seattle. And then I do have some friends still in the area, and they're trying to work on how to get me into the Southern California area coming up here pretty soon. So when we have a date on that, I'll let everybody know.
Man, I'll talk about it later in the week, but I still that thirst to get back to Southern California is still there.
Right.
So my job is actually may end up facilitating that, but we'll talk about it later.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna keep plugging away fitness, kettlebell. Well, I've been talking a lot of Tai Chi stuff. I'm getting ready to do a huge series on Bruce Lee. Have you heard about the 700-page Bruce Lee biography that's out? Like
I
debunks
think,
everything about Bruce Lee.
yeah, I think you said you were reading that, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm only like 25% through, and I'm like just got through with the Wong Jack Man fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like blowing my mind. Like I got so much, so I'm gonna be probably talking Bruce Lee on the Golden Bell Training Channel all summer. And then I got like the old books. I don't want to just, oh, Bruce Lee, blah, blah, blah. I want to deal more with his fitness, his training, his philosophy when it came to martial arts, to kind of ease people into, okay, get off YouTube. Let's go work out now. Uh,
Right.
some of these projects I had on a back burner for a few years. I got a workout on like conditioning for the 1 inch punch, Bruce Lee's 1 inch punch. So I want to put together a workout of mine based on what those guys put out in their ebook. If you have some ideas, we can link up and try to get that out. Maybe we use it as a lead magnet or a
Right.
course, or something that'll lead into a course eventually. And I want to talk to you probably in the fall about getting out there. Maybe we can put together a kettlebell conditioning course, kettlebells, body weight
Right.
for martial arts. Figure out some kind of
Perfect.
way to. So yeah, that's us talking some business to y'all.
Right. Perfect. All right. So don't forget, if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher, after we start releasing these as podcast episodes, don't forget to leave us a review. Those will make a massive difference to us. And if you want to subscribe, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, or look for a link in the video description below. If you want to support the show on Patreon, there's also a link in the video description below to go ahead and do that. Don't forget to follow Prince on Twitter at Urban Acolyte, or I'm on Twitter as well at Ash Higgs. Find the same on Instagram. That's going to do it for this week's episode. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us in the live chat for those of you who are watching live. And we will catch you next week.